I recognized my dad's fiancée from a true crime podcast, and he told me I was delusional. Dad sent me a photo of his new girlfriend with the caption, "She's the one," and my stomach dropped. I knew that face. I'd seen it in a podcast thumbnail 3 months ago about a woman whose husband drowned in their pool, and she inherited everything. I called him immediately and said, "Dad, do not see her again." He laughed and said, "You haven't even met her." I said, "Her last husband died under suspicious circumstances." He went quiet and then said, "Jake, I know the divorce was hard on you, but you can't sabotage every relationship I have." 2 weeks later, he called and said they were engaged. I drove to his house and found her there cooking dinner like she owned the place. She smiled at me with perfect warmth and said, "You must be Jake. Your dad talks about you constantly." Dad looked at her like she'd hung the moon. I waited until she went to the bathroom and said, "Dad, I'm begging you, look her up. Google her maiden name." He said, "Her name is Claire. She's a nurse. She volunteers at animal shelters. You're being paranoid." I pulled up the podcast on my phone, but he wouldn't even look at it. The wedding was in 3 weeks. I spent every night digging through news archives and found it. Claire Morrison, married to a developer named Richard, who died in their backyard pool in 2019. No charges filed, ruled accidental. She inherited his estate worth $2.3 million. I showed up at Dad's house with printed articles. Claire answered the door, and her smile didn't even flicker when she saw the papers in my hand. "Jake, come in. Your dad's in the study." I walked past her and she whispered, "Careful, honey. Obsession isn't a good look." Dad barely glanced at the articles. He said, "Richard had a heart condition. The medical examiner cleared her. You're manufacturing a conspiracy because you can't handle me being happy." I said, "Dad, I'm not crazy." He said, "Then stop acting like it or you're not coming to the wedding." I left and called the detective who'd worked Richard's case. He said the investigation was closed, but off the record, there were things that never added up. The life insurance policy taken out 6 months before. The fact that Richard's business partner said he'd been planning to leave her wedding day. I sat in the back row and watched Claire walk down the aisle in white. During the reception, she came to my table and sat down. "Jake, I know what you think of me." I said, "You killed your husband." She laughed softly and said, "Richard had a weak heart and terrible habits. The pool was just unfortunate timing." I said, "You took out a policy on him 6 months before he died." She leaned in close. "Your dad's updated his will. I'm the sole beneficiary. He's got the lake house, the retirement accounts, everything I need. You should be nicer to me. Falls can happen anywhere, not just pools." I recorded every word. I walked straight to my dad during the first dance and played it. His face went white. Claire saw us and her expression shifted from warm to cold in half a second. Dad stepped away from her and said, "What did you just say to my son?" She recovered quickly. "He's twisting things, you know how he gets." But Dad was already walking toward the exit. She grabbed his arm and her voice changed, sharp and real. "Don't be stupid. You already signed everything." Dad pulled away and said, "We're leaving, now." We went to the police that night. With the recording and the detective's suspicions, they reopened Richard's case. They found digitized records of Claire's search history from the week before his death. Drowning symptoms, estate law, undetectable heart attack substances. They found 2 previous husbands before Richard, both dead, both generous life insurance policies. Claire was arrested for suspicion of murder in 3 deaths. Dad and I sat in his kitchen the next morning in silence. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry I didn't believe you." I said, "I just needed you alive to hear the apology."